think we're going 4, 3, 2. All right, Chris. So welcome back from our extended commercial break. It's been so long that I actually appeared on your podcast.
How about that?
Yeah. And people may notice your shirt changed a little bit. So Chris and I were talking in the first half of the show, and in their infinite wisdom, the cable company decided to cut the line to his building because they're doing work in the neighborhood, and we totally lost connection. So we had to reschedule the second half of this. But Chris, we were starting to get into advice for, entrepreneurs and business owners and things you've learned and advice you give out on your podcast and all that kind of stuff. So why don't I take it from there, and then you take it from there, and then I'll ask you questions as we go along.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we were able to get back together. Yes. I literally had just the day before talked about making sure you have a good business resumption strategy.
Yeah.
That, when COVID hit, we could work from home. So here I am in my office. I've got my 6 employees who are in the office. Everybody's out. And because we're a web-enabled company with voice over IP phones.
All virtual. Right.
So we had to sit there and work through that, but we are back. But I just gave some advice to a subcontractor of mine this morning that I think is something that I obviously have been bringing up a lot with people, is that you have to have processes, right? But
right.
I think go out there and do some work and then figure out what the process needs to be and then improve it.
Yeah.
But as Warren Buffett says, being bigger isn't better. Being better is better. And
right.
I just had a subcontractor say, man, he says, Chris, I want to be like you. Well, I've got 44 employees, and it took me 14 years to get to that.
Yeah.
You can't go from 2 to 7 and not expect some bumps in the road. And that's exactly what he did. And I said, now you're going to have to reset and get back. Do what you do best. And I told him a story that at the time, as a handyman company, we did all handyman work. So one of our biggest jobs was probably $12,000. Well, one of the sales guys landed an $80,000 bathroom and basement remodel.
Okay.
When we were done with the project and I got all the receipts and we just started to do job costing, when I got everything in, and then we missed one last receipt and we got that in, my hard costs out of pocket were $84,000 for an $80,000 revenue job. So I lost $4,000.
For those people listening, that's a $4,000 loss.
That's a hard loss, man. That wasn't just I didn't make my margin. That was true money out the door.
Right.
And
bad planning.
You look back and you go, how'd you do there?
Right.
It would have been cheaper for me to write him a $2,000 check and go back and start making money.
Right.
So
it's true. So maybe that was taking on too much too soon, is what you're saying at that point?
Too much too soon. I think sometimes, you listen to me on a podcast, or if you follow me on social media, I'm taking a lot of trips now, but I didn't in the beginning. And people say, oh man, you got the good life. I want to be like you.
Took you a long time to get there.
It takes a long time to get there. And I'd never heard that, you hear about these guys who bootstrap, and next thing you know, they're $100 million businesses.
Yeah, there's no such thing. Right. I know. They all struggled.
Everybody has struggled. And if they say they didn't struggle, then they weren't trying, because they weren't getting there. And that's the thing where I'd like to put out into the universe. I mean, I'm authentic, but I keep it positive. But I don't tell you about the times where the cable company decided to upgrade me on a Friday morning while my business was flying around. So so you don't want to talk about those, but yeah, you struggle. And I think that's the thing when you're chasing something, you've just got to sometimes take a breath and then get after what is the process, how could it be better, and then can I scale that process?
So maybe you do a little strategic planning and then put it into place and see how it's working, and then is that working to work out your processes, and then maybe scale it a little bit more and grow it. So it's not like you're doing a business plan or you're doing a strategic plan. You go out and you execute the whole thing. It's in parts and it's in steps, because that's the way to do it safer, right? That's the way to avoid big mistakes. Luckily, your mistake didn't come in $160,000 and it was an $80,000 job. I mean, it was in hindsight, maybe $4,000 was a lot of money then, but your margins on a $12,000 job that was probably more than your margins on that. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, I think that's the thing that everybody has to check up. Sometimes, I went out there and would change 3 or 4 things at once, and something would not work, and you had to figure out of the 3 or 4 of the
which one
which one wasn't working. So that's the kind of stuff that I don't think people give enough thought to before they do things, and everybody says, wow, I just want to be like him and be on the golf course at Friday at 1:00, which is one of the reasons I tried to start my business, because I saw I was in the corporate world and all these guys were golfing at 1:00. I'm like, I can't even get home before 6 on Friday. I can't believe you guys are golfing.
Exactly. So do you golf?
I do.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Well, those are some of the rewards that come from, whether you're a golfer or fisherman, whatever, come from, the hard work. But I think you're right. I talk to a lot of people, and what they do is they will try to get everything right, which they know, it's never right. So they try to do all this stuff and plan out this whole thing. And then first of all, they have a little, they're hesitant to get started, but I think they potentially can make a lot of big mistakes. And if you kind of just take little baby steps and adjust it as you go, you avoid a lot of those and get advice as you go and work with mentors and, people like you who have made mistakes and learned. But I guess in hindsight, if that job was a $18,000 job or a $22,000 job, only one or two times bigger than you had done, you may have been able to pull it off.
Yeah. And that's the thing that people, I think sometimes we miss, we're in a lane and that lane's working pretty well, but we see this other lane and maybe they're going faster. I'm going to jump in that lane, but you're not ready and you're not at speed and you're going to get wrecked. And that's the thing, especially in remodeling. There's all different kinds of remodelers. There's the jacklegs who have their pickup trucks and come out of their basement. And then there's the design build firms that have a studio you go to pick out selections and get to see a 3D rendering before you even start your job. And so, those guys are $500,000 plus guys. And
of course, different client, different customer, different jobs, different contracts, different pieces that are moving around the board. The other guy just manages on his own.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So if he tried to turn around and do a $500,000 project for somebody who expect white glove service and want to go look at a design studio, he would fail because he's not in that lane. He's in this lane.
Yeah. It's not his world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the kind of things you talk about on your podcast when it comes to, small business owners and the kind of tools that they should use, not necessarily in your industry. I don't mean that, no pun intended, tools, but, but the kind of things that you talk about. Exactly.
Yeah. Some of the things, especially when we talk about is the scaling part, we talk a lot about starting, but 9 out of 10 businesses fail. And if you want to be that one that doesn't fail, is that in the beginning, cash is king. Sales are queen, and you've got to make sure that your king and queen are rolling so you can get yourself going. And then in my world, I'm so focused on my business and a lot of the other kind of businesses I've talked to. The only way to really scale is people. And so your key to scaling will be
your business. Right. Yeah.
And again, as you do that, the scaling piece, you hear it every time. It comes down to people. But I do also think what we talk about is leadership. Developing your culture in your company, because you have a culture, whether you know it or not. And over the arc of my 15 years now, because it'll be 15 years here in another week, I've had to change my style numerous times to fit the model and fit what worked best. Yeah. So we've talked about that. Aside of the people part, just also making sure you know your numbers and have those sit back. And sit back there. So we talked a lot about those. We just had a great guy on who's a serial entrepreneur. I mean, we actually made a joke the whole time. It's coming out later, but I don't know if you ever saw that little reindeer caddy pooper. It's like a reindeer pooper pooper. I said, you're like the reindeer pooper of businesses. I'm like, how many do you have? He said, now I got 7. I'm like, oh my God. I said, wait a minute. Oh, you must have just started another one because we've been on the phone for 5 minutes.
Were they all related, like in some way, or?
So interesting play in his part. Yes, they were. He liked vehicles. He started a detailing business.
Sure.
He and his wife actually were the ones doing the detailing. Then they realized they needed a software to run that detailing business because they started to scale. They needed processes and they needed job descriptions, but the software became software. Now he sells to other detailers, window tinters, auto.
He created the software to run the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He created that software. Yeah. And then people were coming in saying, man, I really like the other cars I'm seeing getting detailed, because usually people who are getting their cars detailed are usually a little bit nicer clientele. Yeah. But they couldn't find other exotic vehicles. So they opened up a car dealership. I'm like, oh my God.
That's a bigger endeavor.
Whoa.
Right.
So, got a business partner. He actually runs a cell phone company, sells cell phones out of a kiosk. It's just, and why was that complimentary? Because people were in there and they were on their phones, and he just got to see
one thing led to another, basically.
Yeah. And so how was he able to pull it off? We talked about that. And it was obviously he had to have the right people in place, and he had to know the right metrics to follow and measure.
Yeah. I wonder about a guy, some people just have a knack for business, and they don't do the kind of strategic planning that other people need to do. Like they do it in their head, or they get it done. And other people don't find it that easy. It doesn't mean that they can't be successful. It's they got to be a little bit more methodical. They have to things written down. They have to kind of strategize things a little bit better. It sounds to me like this guy would just like roll from one thing.
It was almost as good as your interview. Okay. But, but I mean, his energy, and you're right. I think this is the kind of guy, which is, I think this would be interesting. I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, but if I said, hey, you're going to start a business, but you have to start it the Disney way, and you got to have a business plan, and I need to have that 20-page business plan in my hands, approved, embedded through a committee, and then we'll let you start your business. I think that would probably drive him insane and drive him to start it.
Right. And I think most business owners don't need that level of detail either, but they need to have a place to go back to and say, what was it that I was going to do? How was I going to do it? Why didn't that work? Yeah. It's like you said, I think you test a lot of things, but if you do too many at one time, you can't really determine what it is that's wrong.
Yeah. When I first started my business plan said I was going to pay my guys on a percentage of the job. So in our world, if I charged $1,000, I would pay them $240. Okay. And so that's what I was going to do. Well, when I first got started, I didn't have the jobs and I didn't have the discipline. So I just paid these guys by the hour. Here I am 6 months into it. And I realized I'm just paying them by the hour. And in the month of January, we had a cold snap here where actually we had to shut down because of an ice storm for 2 days. I went to pay everybody on a weekly basis. I paid out more in payroll than I did in revenue generation. I didn't bring in enough revenue to cover their payroll.
So these guys were still on payroll, even though they weren't able to go work.
Yeah. So 3 weeks later, I changed the whole thing back to what my original business plan was. And the reason I didn't implement it was because I just got off, started winging it, and hourly is a lot easier to calculate, and hourly is a lot easier to explain to people and give them a set number. And I learned my lesson and made that move pretty quick. So I didn't lose for too long.
Well, I guess you could do it hourly, but it would have to be the hours worked. It would have to be on the job. You punch in, you put in your hours, you get paid. If you're not working for whatever reason, that's a dangerous way to live.
Yep. So it was in my business plan. It was right there, and I went, didn't follow it. So much for having your plan there, tough guy. You better follow it.
Exactly. Yeah. I also wanted to make a point. You were talking about scaling before. Scaling doesn't necessarily mean, you and I were talking about this in the first half, I think, or maybe off the mic, whatever. Scaling doesn't necessarily mean, for the people listening, that you're going to build a franchise system. It depends on what you're scaling your business, but I don't think you're intending to franchise, right? You're just building several locations to support different markets, right?
Yeah, I got some good advice, and I probably need to bring this up more. Always build your business for an exit. Which is hard to do in the beginning. It's hard to be thinking about like that, because you're like, hey, I'm just building this to get out of it.
Trying to get going.
Yeah. So in my world, I have tested the franchise model, which a number of franchises out there like mine are out there and going. I've chosen to not franchise my business, but I've chosen to put all the processes in as if I did. To be able to run
because if somebody wants to buy it, they might have the inclination to franchise. I know I have a client up here that owns a Mr. Handyman franchise. He bought it from another guy who was looking to exit, and he was a corporate guy. He's a little handy, I guess, but he runs the business. He's got guys working for him, and it was an ongoing business. And I don't think he would have bought into it if it wasn't a franchise that had a support system. I mean, that's really what a good franchise comes down to, right? It may be a name, it may be not, but it's a support system of business owners and a parent company supporting what you're doing. At least that's the good ones are, I
agree 100%. If you have a good one, that's what they do. And if you have a good franchisee, then they understand that you don't just sit in your office and let the money come to you. You actually have to be the operator. You got support and help and a system, but you've got to be out there doing your marketing and the sales, because it's the same thing, whether a franchise or not. Cash is king, sales is queen. You got to get out there and keep doing it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a franchise just gives you kind of the business in a box and say, here's the parts. You still got to do the same stuff, even though maybe you got a parent behind you that can support you when you're down and crying and whatever you're doing. But
exactly right.
But I think, the whole exit thing, I think a lot of people overlook, because they're like, their business is a lifestyle business. I mean, basically supporting their lifestyle. And one day they're like, oh, well, I don't want to do this forever. I want to retire. So let me sell my business. And I get business owners come to me all the time. I'm like, well, what is anybody going to buy? I mean, maybe your client list is worth some money, but you don't have, you don't have like subscriptions, right? Where you're taking care of homes and you got homeowners or business owners on retainer. You don't have things like that. So what do you have? I mean, do you have employees? Do you have processes? Do you have a name? Do you have all these pieces that kind of get put together? And you can't do it in 6 weeks. 6 months, even. You need years to be prepared for it.
I'm actually, I'm actually got the countdown going. I'm in my second year of my 5-year plan. So I've got
it's like 3 to 5 years is the number, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
And you're right. I think I just saw another stat on Biz Buy Sell. 87% of the businesses out there will not be sold.
No, because there's nothing to buy.
Nothing to buy. Yep.
Right. If I can go and buy your bagel shop, right? You have some equipment, you got people eating your bagels, and at the same token, I could open a bagel shop next door and run you out of business. Then what are you buying?
Yep. What are you buying? So that's where I'm trying to shift. And I intentionally said, I had a guy ask me, is this a capital appreciation play or is this a lifestyle play for you? And I said, well, it's going to be a lifestyle. Right. Now he's a mentor of mine, and I actually have him on the books in a month to get back together and say, okay, now lifestyle, but I want to exit that lifestyle or be able to have it support me while I'm doing other things. So I'm going to have him. We're going to just knock it around a little bit because there's software plays out there, guys who build their software, don't draw a dime, put all their money back in their business, keep going, hopefully to get acquired for that big exit out.
Right.
Which again is another very hard thing to do.
Very hard, risky.
Yeah, and very risky. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you want your business to support your lifestyle, to give you income, and to eventually make it easier for you to work less.
Yep. I think that's why as you start to build for exit or start to think like that, you actually make some different choices. I mean, I've made some choices on. I didn't jump in to solve a problem. I made the team solve the problem, and now that problem is not mine, and now it's theirs, and now they have a way to do that. Right. And I'm the last level of recourse when it comes to escalation of issues.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a skill to leadership and managing your practice and empowering your people. I know a lot of people that they didn't exit their business and sell their business. There's nothing to sell, but they have really good people working for them. And they don't have to be in the office every day, and they have a lot of flexibility, and they can go work on other businesses, looking at ventures, whatever they happen to be doing, because they put the right people in place. They trusted the people to kind of learn and get empowered. I think business owners have a lot of trouble with that. Like it's with children, right? You're just afraid to let go. And at some point you have to try. If it doesn't work, then maybe that's something. Job or they're the wrong person for the company or whatever, but you got to kind of shake that out. And I think a lot of business owners are afraid of that.
Absolutely afraid of it, right? Because that's your baby, it's your reputation. And your reputation will take some hits, and you're like, how come that individual let that happen to my business? And now you have to decide how you're going to react. And what I have been doing as of late, again, I'm the last level of escalation of issues.
Yeah.
But since I have done this in the last 2 years, we've gotten more Google reviews than we ever have and more 5 stars than we ever had. So we're actually better now than when I was in there and strangling everybody and getting involved in every single issue.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you get to the point where you should be doing the big things, not sweeping the floors.
Yeah.
I think another trap that business owners tend to run into as they become successful, the 1 or 2 people, it's often usually one person, right, who was with them from early on and kind of was their assistant and then grew up to be the office manager and is got 14 hats, and he or she never gave up certain things, and their job was never redefined. The business becomes almost so dependent on that person that you get to the point where you better give the person a month off. Say, listen, we're going to pay you. Go away for a month and let's see if we can operate this business. Because some people, they're very beholden to 1 or 2 employees who, quote unquote, have the keys to the castle and have control, and they don't own the business. They're just asking for more income and, stuff like that, walk out the door. So I've found a lot of business owners put themselves not vicarious, that's the wrong word, in precarious positions, right?
Yeah.
Because they rely too much on, one person to run their business. You got to kind of do both. And
it's harder to do what I feel like I've done is been able to separate duties. So I'm not beholden to one person.
Right.
But you know what? It's a lot harder to do that. And
It
it's more
is.
expensive. And you make less money because that means you have to have two people where you thought maybe just one could have pulled it off.
Right.
But you're not in that position, like you said, where if that person came into you on a Friday afternoon at 4:00 and said, I'm not coming back on Monday, I'm done.
Right. I'm done.
Yeah.
And business owners do that. And they scrounge around and they're like, where were the keys to that? I think it was in her desk. Who had this? I think he did. And it's, it's difficult. And like you said, it is difficult and it is more costly. But I think the risk of losing that employee it's a bigger impact on the business if it were to happen. It's like buying insurance, right? You think, well, I mean, it's not going to happen. But if it does, you're out of business without insurance.
Right.
So you don't even have a choice. It's not a question of how often, what's the chances of you dying in the next 5 years? Probably not very high, but that doesn't mean you don't buy life insurance because it's happening to somebody. And if it happens to you, the business falls apart,
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, that's one of the things I did. I put in my book is that I had a functional org chart from day one. Now I filled every box.
Nice. Right. But it doesn't have to be full at the beginning.
Yeah. So, and then my first office employee was my first CSR. So now she was taking the first calls, but I was still filling every other box. And then eventually I got an operations manager. And then eventually I got somebody who did accounts payable, accounts receivable, and our bookkeeping work. But they also double teamed as also answering the phones.
So Chris, what did you do? You laid out like what your vision of the company would be as it grew and said, listen, this is where I want to be. I only have these two people, but I got 7 other positions. This is what they do. And then you kind of filled that in, adjusted it going forward.
Exactly right. So
good way to do it.
I had a CSR. I had
service representative, right?
Customer service, head of sales. That was me. Operations and scheduler. That was me. Lead technician. That was me. Helper.
A lot of the boxes at the beginning.
Marketer.
Right.
Chief marketing officer. I was our CFO, chief financial officer. So I filled all those roles. Oh, I was also the head of HR, but I had all those boxes sitting there.
Yeah.
And then I started to put job descriptions as I needed them. What did I want to start getting rid of? Things that we do as owners is we do everything at first, but there are things I don't want to do. There's things I'm not good at. There are things I'm really good at.
But it's not worth your time.
But not worth my time. So you got to figure out what those are and then start to bundle it together and go, oh, okay, you know what? Now I have an office manager. And so the office manager is going to do all the things I don't want to do, which is I'm going to entrust her to answer the phones, but also keep track of the books for me while I'm out running around doing the sales and collecting the money and doing all that. And then eventually we split the bookkeeping away from her because she didn't like doing it. And we brought somebody else in, but still answered phones and did the bookkeeping.
Yeah, I like that approach because people are visual, right? So if you lay out your organizational chart and you're in 90% of the boxes, then you can just focus on, okay, how do I get out of this box? I get this person, she's really good. Let me put her in there. How do I get out of this box? And then slowly but surely, you're the last guy on the top and you're not filling any other boxes.
Yep. And it also helps with you thinking about your day to day and your week to week because you can get really frustrated trying to do everything at once.
Yeah.
And I was also guilty of doing that. I would get really frustrated. I was out there, fixing up some caulk in the bathroom that one of my guys
putting out fires all day.
Yeah. And so I'm up there doing that, but I was missing a sales call I was supposed to be on, and I wasn't answering the phone because I had my phone on silent. So I had 3 voicemails I had to pick up. Oh, by the way, I had to get back to the office to write the checks for everybody for payroll. And that was a day. And you're like, whoa. And so I started to segment those things out.
Yeah. I think under no circumstances should you be putting caulk in a shower or a tub. That is a really bad use of your time.
That was a bad use of my time because number one, I'm not that fast at it. I'm okay at it. I get good quality, but you got to do it all the time and you be good at it. And that's why I said from now on, I'm not our number one fixer.
Right. And you know what? But that is a constant problem of business owners. Doing the things, maybe they had to do at the beginning. I understand, right? But doing the little things, the operational things that they absolutely should not be doing, but they're either afraid that nobody else can do it as good as me, which isn't true, or, I can't pay that person. It's going to cost me more. They got to figure it out. Or maybe they shouldn't be doing this as a business. Like that's not the way you grow a business.
Or this. So I have grown up with Outlook Mail. I've used Microsoft Office 365. I can jockey around in it. I can put signatures in. I'm pretty proficient. I'm not an expert, but when I bring somebody on board, I try to teach them how to use Outlook. And then isn't it easier just to grab the PC and just do it for them? It's just quicker.
Right. But that's like not a good use of your time. You got to train them to learn to take it over. You're not going to be.
Yeah. I can't answer your emails for you, man. You got to learn how to answer emails on your phone or your laptop.
Right.
And that was in the beginning. I mean, today, now most people in our business, in the business world, know how to do this stuff. But that's a great example of, just get out of the way.
There's a lot of software that people don't, you're like, oh, just give it to me. I'll do it. No, but now you're giving up. You don't realize how much you're giving up.
Yeah. And so, as I train new sales guys now, that's where I jump into the business pretty hard as I train our new sales guys. So the first month and a half, I'm with them a lot, usually in the beginning, every other day. And then it becomes 2 days a week and then 1 day a week. But I want them to understand my culture and all the stuff I've seen. But my sales manager has taken over the other part of the training now. So that's one spot where I jump in and, you jump in and you start to teach these guys our software that we use to write estimates. And again, it's easier to just give me that thing. But
right. I'll just do the estimates. That's crazy.
Done in 10 minutes.
Right.
But let's take 30 minutes. And now you should know what to do. So your job is to understand and not have me ever tell you again.
And save you the 10 minutes times 100 that you would have been doing them quick, quote unquote.
So now after I'm done training this guy, we'll be up to 5 sales guys and a sales manager. So you're right. Those 5 guys and a sales manager, 6 of them out there running around can do more estimates than me in a day. So they're scaled, but they've scaled with my training and now they're out there doing their work.
And are they business development guys? They're looking for business or you're getting the leads and sending them out on jobs? How's that work?
So the marketing is we get a call in, we determine if we can send a handyman out directly to the house, or do we need to go out there on site and do an estimate in a remodeling job or another thing. So these guys are remodeling sales. We call them estimators, not sales guys.
Right. And where's the call in coming from? How's it coming to you? Why?
So this is one where I did pretty good with the marketing here in the metro Atlanta area. I've got a marketing strategy that's worked pretty well. So we get anywhere between 20 and 50 new business calls a day.
A day?
A day.
And where are you doing your marketing, whatever?
So, of course, everybody's going to go right to, you must be on the internet. You got it. Yes.
No, but you're local, not necessarily.
Google My Business is huge for any local business. That is huge. But what I've done with mine, I really haven't coined a phrase for it. I'm sure there is a great marketing phrase for it, but I did a lot of different media in concentrated areas. So I am in 4 print books. I'm on the radio at a Home Fix-It show where I go in 4 times a year, and then I'm on his website. I also do a lot of networking and contractor referrals. So larger contractors refer us on the smaller stuff.
Right, but it's not profitable for them to deal with it.
Right. So back to the stay in your lane. Those guys know that for them to deploy their high white glove remodeling service to go fix Susie's sink that's leaking doesn't work for them.
No way. Yeah, absolutely.
But we've been able to make it work. So that's been good. For me, believe it or not, pay-per-click has not been as good as I thought it would be.
Because that's very targeted, right? It's very local.
Very targeted, very local. Our SEO, our website does pretty well. We get anywhere between 1,300 and 1,500 unique views a month. Decent. It's my Google My Business page, which has blown my doors off. We get 7,000 to 9,000.
Is that because of reviews and stuff like that? Like you're constantly getting reviews from clients, customers?
Constantly getting reviews. We're constantly adding photos.
This is tremendous. Much more than anything else. People are looking. They want to see what other people have to say, the experiences they had with you. It's very important.
And Google has put a lot more emphasis on that Google My Business page. In fact, they've got another name for it. You have to go through the map now. But, Google is, again, a purveyor of information. You have a request. They want to make sure they're getting the best information to you based on your request. They're always analyzing it back behind the scenes. But the one thing they also are is they're a business, and they want to keep you on Google's website as much as they can.
Of course.
To get people to pay for advertising, right?
Right.
So our Google My Business page in a home service environment or anything that's locally based, if you're not focused on that, that is just so easy, low-hanging fruit. That's not spending $5,000 a month on pay-per-click and another $2,000 on SEO. This is just put some photos out there, some reviews out there, put it out there, and you'll see it start to work.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I know this is a half a show, so we're coming up on 30 minutes. All right. Before you drop off, we go to the closing credits. Tell us about, because I know about it, but tell everybody about the podcast, your podcast, how they can connect with you, learn from you, all those types of things.
Yeah. So my podcast is the Small Business Safari, where we kick it around, bring people on to help you understand how to either start a business if you're thinking about doing it or scaling a business. It's called the Small Business Safari. Love that. So you can always find me out there on LinkedIn. I have a pretty fun page on Instagram called the customerservice.freak because I'm all about customer service and building that. And so you go out there and check me out. And I have a website called chrislalomia.com where you can find all our details about my businesses between the Home Service Institute, the podcast, and then the Trusted Toolbox, which is the big one.
All right. Well, I thank you coming back on to finish the show.
So I thank the cable company for allowing me to stay connected to you.
Exactly, to keep you in business. That's always nice.
Yep.
I'm going to play the closing credits. I hope you hear them because that means it's working, but who knows what's happening these days. And let's, definitely stay in touch. Absolutely.
Yeah. I look forward to it. I definitely want to stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. You hear that? Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.